They fired me with a two-line email at 8:45 a.m. I glanced at my watch, let out a bitter laugh, and packed my desk in silence. The executive team didn't even bother showing up, just HR and security, watching me like I might steal their precious staplers. At 9 a.m. sharp, my phone buzzed, same number that just kicked me out. This time, they were begging. My name is Madeline Carter, Maddie to the few people who bothered learning it, and for 5 years, I was the invisible backbone of Northvale Logistics. 36 years old, single, and apparently worth less than the coffee machine they'd just upgraded in the executive lounge. I'd built their entire operations management system from scratch. A $5 million beast that handled everything from inventory tracking to route optimization across 14 distribution centers. When I started at Northvale, they were still using Excel sheets and prayer to manage their supply chain. Now they moved $200 million in goods annually through my system. And it ran so smoothly that most people forgot I existed. That's the thing about being good at infrastructure. When you do your job right, nobody notices. Until you're gone. Caleb Stenson noticed me, though, not in a good way. He'd been hired 3 months ago as our new COO, brought in to streamline operations and maximize efficiency. Translation: slash budgets and fire people to make his quarterly reports shine, fresh from his MBA, wearing suits that cost more than my monthly salary. He looked at spreadsheets the way surgeons look at tumors, something to be cut out. Maddie's department is overstaffed, he'd announced in his second week, despite never setting foot in our server room or understanding what we actually did. One person maintaining a system? That's redundant. I'd tried explaining that one person meant I was on call 24/7, that I'd built custom protocols no outsourced IT team could understand, that the documentation alone would take months to transfer. He'd smiled that private school smile and said, "That's what they all say." The summons came Sunday night. Urgent meeting, 8:30 a.m. Monday. Mandatory attendance. I knew what it meant. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, missed holidays, and 3 a.m. emergency fixes reduced to a calendar invite. I spent Sunday night backing up my personal files and writing down the system's critical passwords, not out of kindness, but because I'm not a monster. Those passwords would expire in 72 hours anyway. Monday morning. I dressed in my best blazer, might as well look professional while they showed me the door. The Dallas heat was already oppressive at 8 a.m., making the walk from the parking lot feel like a march through soup. The security guard, Marcus, who usually chatted about his kids, wouldn't meet my eyes. That confirmed it. The conference room smelled like fear and cheap cologne. Caleb sat at the head of the table, flanked by Jennifer from HR and 2 security guards I'd never seen before. No one from IT, no one from my actual department, just the firing squad. "Maddie," Caleb began, not even attempting warmth. "We've conducted a thorough review of departmental efficiency, and we've made the difficult decision to eliminate your position, effective immediately." I almost laughed. Difficult decision? He'd been planning this since day one. Jennifer slid the paperwork across the table. "We're prepared to offer 2 weeks severance, contingent on signing this NDA and agreement not to pursue legal action. 2 weeks, 5 years, and they valued me at 2 weeks. The system," I started, "will be managed by CyberCore Solutions." Caleb interrupted. "They're industry leaders. We've already signed the contract." CyberCore, I knew them. Offshore developers who promised the moon and delivered PowerPoints. They'd have no idea how I jury-rigged our ancient warehouse systems to talk to modern cloud services, or why Server 3 had to be rebooted in a specific sequence, or that the entire Texas routing algorithm was held together by custom code I'd written during a hurricane. "You have 15 minutes to clear your desk," Jennifer added. "Security will escort you." I signed the papers without reading them. Didn't matter. Texas was an at-will state anyway. As I stood to leave, I made eye contact with Caleb one last time. "You sure you want to do this?" I asked. Not pleading, just curious. He leaned back, that MBA smirk spreading across his face. "I'm sure we'll manage." I smiled back, a real smile, for the first time in months. I'm sure you will. The security guards flanked me like I was some kind of criminal. Jake and somebody new, probably hired specifically for firing days. They watched me pack 5 years into a cardboard box, my coffee mug with the faded "World's Okayest Developer" text, a stress ball shaped like a server, photos from the company picnic where I'd won the chili cook-off, pathetic remnants of a life spent in fluorescent lighting. My hands stayed steady as I disconnected my personal keyboard, the mechanical one I'd bought myself because Northvale's equipment was garbage. Each keystroke on those company-issued Dell keyboards felt like typing on wet cardboard. Funny how they'd spend $5 million on a system, but couldn't spring for decent peripherals. "You've got 10 more minutes," Jake muttered, checking his watch like I might steal time itself. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of my desk. Empty now, except for the 3 monitors I'd configured perfectly for system monitoring. The middle screen still showed the dashboard I'd designed, green lights across the board, everything running smoothly. For now. The walk to the parking lot felt like a funeral procession. Employees scattered when they saw security escorts, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the artwork on the walls. Sarah from accounting caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry," before disappearing into the break room. Travis from shipping actually stepped out to shake my hand. Security be damned. "This is bullshit, Maddie," he whispered. "You're the only reason our stuff actually works." I squeezed his hand. "Take care of yourself, Travis." The Texas sun hit me like a slap when we exited the building. 9 a.m. and already 89 degrees. My Civic sat baking in the employee lot, far from the executive spots with their covered parking. I'd never park there again. Strange how that felt like freedom instead of loss. Jake held out his hand. Badge and parking pass. I unclipped them from my belt, ran my thumb over the photo one last time. Bad fluorescent lighting, forced smile, hair I'd since cut short because who had time for styling when servers crashed at midnight? I handed them over without ceremony. "That's it then," Jake said, almost apologetically. "You can't return to the premises without prior authorization." Wouldn't dream of it. I tossed the box in my trunk, noting how light it felt. 5 years, and it all fit in one banker's box with room to spare. My phone buzzed as I started the engine, a text from Lisa in Network Ops. WTF just happened? I didn't reply. What was there to say? That Caleb needed to cut costs to justify his bloated salary? That I'd been too expensive, too essential, too much of a threat to his ego? That knowing how things actually worked made me dangerous? The drive home felt surreal. Rush hour was over, so I sailed down I-35 while everyone else sat in their cubicles. My apartment complex looked different at 9:15 on a Monday morning, full of stay-at-home parents and retirees. People who belonged here during business hours. Now I was one of them. I set the box on my kitchen counter and stared at it. Somewhere in Northvale's gleaming office building, Caleb was probably already announcing my replacement, spinning it as a transition to industry-standard solutions or some other corporate doublespeak. The cyber core team would be getting their logins, poking around my system like archaeologists in a tomb they couldn't read. My phone rang. Northvale's main line. I let it go to voicemail, poured myself a coffee, and sat on my balcony. The heat was brutal, but I didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to care about server temperatures or backup schedules or whether the Seattle warehouse's connection was acting up again. The phone rang again, same number. This time I smiled. A real smile that had nothing to do with customer service or professional courtesy. I'd told Caleb he'd manage. I hadn't said for how long. I declined the call, set my phone to silent, and took a long sip of coffee. It tasted like freedom, with a hint of schadenfreude. They'd learn soon enough that some things can't be outsourced, streamlined, or maximized. Some things just needed to be understood. And understanding was no longer my job. By 9 a.m., Caleb Stenson was feeling pretty good about himself. He'd just saved Northvale $95,000 a year. Plus benefits. The board would eat that up at the quarterly review. He was already drafting the email in his head. Successful elimination of redundant positions while transitioning to scalable third-party solutions. Then his desk phone rang. Mr. Stenson? It was Donna from the Dallas Distribution Center, and she sounded wrong. We've got a problem. The system's showing error messages. Nobody can pull orders. What kind of error messages? Just red. Everything's red, says authorization protocol failed. Caleb frowned. Put it on it. The new team from Cybercore should. They're here. They can't get in. Their logins aren't working. His computer dinged. Email from Chicago. Urgent inventory system down. Another from Phoenix. Cannot process shipments, critical. Seattle, Atlanta, Denver. His inbox exploded like a string of firecrackers. Jennifer from HR burst through his door without knocking. Caleb, we've got drivers sitting in loading bays across 6 states. Nothing's moving. Get the Cybercore team lead on the phone. Now. The next 15 minutes were a masterclass in corporate panic. The lead developer from Cybercore, thick accent, probably sitting in Bangalore, kept repeating the same useless phrase. We need system documentation. We need administrative access. We need to understand architecture. I gave you admin access, Caleb snapped. No, sir. You gave us user credentials. This system has custom protocols. Very unusual setup. We need highest level access. Caleb pulled up the credentials Maddie had left. Tried them himself. The system laughed at him with another red error message. By 9:20, he had 2 board members on hold, the CEO screaming in his ear, and a number on his screen that made his stomach drop. $400,000. That's what Northvale lost per hour when shipments stopped moving. Sir? His assistant peeked in, looking terrified. There's a Mr. Chen from our biggest client on line 3. Says if their shipment doesn't leave Dallas in the next hour, they're pulling their contract. Not Chen. Anyone but Chen Industries. They represented 30% of Northvale's revenue. Caleb's hands shook as he scrolled through his phone. He'd deleted Maddie's number after the meeting, a final power move. Had to get it from HR, who took 5 precious minutes to find it because they'd already processed her termination. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. Hello? Her voice was calm, amused, even. Maddie, we need you to come back. Silence. Then, oh, so now I'm needed? The system's down, company-wide, Cybercore can't. Not my problem. Caleb, I don't work for you anymore, remember? You made that very clear about. He heard rustling paper. 24 minutes ago. This is serious. I'm sure it is. You should probably call Cybercore. They're industry leaders, right? Maddie, please. We'll discuss reinstating your position. She laughed. Actually laughed. Discuss? No. Caleb, here's what's going to happen. You're going to send me an email, right now, offering me a consulting contract. $50,000 to fix this immediate problem, non-negotiable. $50,000, that's extortion. No, that's supply and demand. Your supply of people who understand that system just hit 0. Your demand, judging by the panic in your voice, is pretty high. TikTok. Caleb. Chen Industries doesn't like waiting. How did you know about Chen? Because I built the alert system that's probably screaming at you right now. 50,000, email confirmation. Or you can explain to the board how you lost your biggest client to save my salary. Caleb's jaw clenched. Around him, the office was descending into chaos. Phones ringing nonstop, employees running between departments, his assistant fielding increasingly angry calls. Fine, I'll send the email. Smart choice, I'll be there in an hour. Oh, and Caleb? Have my parking pass ready. The good lot this time, not employee parking. She hung up before he could respond. Caleb stared at his computer screen, at the sea of red that used to be green, at the millions of dollars hemorrhaging with each passing minute. His phone buzzed. Another text from the board. He started typing the email, each word tasting like crow. I took my sweet time getting ready. Changed out of my interview blazer into jeans and my most comfortable t-shirt. The one from DEF CON 2019 that Caleb would definitely find unprofessional. Applied lipstick carefully. The dark red shade I never wore to the office. If I was going to save their asses, I'd do it on my terms. The email had arrived within minutes, CC'd to legal and the CEO. $50,000 for emergency consulting services. I'd forwarded it to my lawyer friend, who texted back immediately, LMAO, get that money, girl. By the time I pulled into Northvale's executive lot at 10:15, I could see the panic from the parking lot. People were clustered outside the loading docks, drivers leaning against their trucks, smoking and checking their phones. Through the glass lobby, employees scurried like ants whose hill had been kicked. Marcus at security looked relieved to see me. Thank God, it's chaos in there. Maddie. Chaos costs extra. Marcus. I winked and headed inside. The elevator ride to the third floor felt different when you held all the cards. My sneakers squeaked against the marble floor, another small rebellion against their dress code. Jennifer from HR was waiting, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 2 hours. Maddie, thank you for coming. We need you to... I need a workstation with full admin privileges, not the restricted access you usually gave me, and coffee. The good stuff from Caleb's private stash, not the break room swamp water. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'll see what I can do. The IT area looked like a war zone. Cybercore contractors huddled around monitors, typing frantically. Empty energy drink cans littered desks. Someone had a systems architecture diagram drawn on a whiteboard, completely wrong, of course. Everybody out, I announced. One of the contractors, a young guy with frameless glasses, looked up. Excuse me, you're working on making it worse. Out, now. They looked to Caleb, who'd appeared in the doorway like a vampire sensing blood. His perfect hair was mussed, tie loosened, that MBA confidence cracking at the edges. Do what she says, he muttered. I sat at my old desk. They hadn't even cleaned it yet, and cracked my knuckles. Caleb, stay. You're going to want to see this. The login screen appeared. I typed carefully, making sure he could see every keystroke. The system welcomed me back like an old friend. First lesson, I said, navigating to the admin panel. See this little checkbox here? Emergency protocol. You clicked it this morning when you were trying to give Cybercore access. How could that? Because you didn't read the documentation I wrote. Page 47, Section 3. Emergency protocol activates when someone tries to add new admin users without proper authorization sequence. It's a security feature I built after that ransomware scare 2 years ago. I unchecked the box, entered a secondary password, then a third authorization code. The angry red dashboard flickered, then slowly turned green. Dallas came online first, then Chicago, Phoenix, Seattle, like dominoes falling in reverse. 3 passwords. Caleb's voice was strained. 4, actually. I entered the last one. That's what happens when you build a system to be bulletproof. It's also what you pay someone to know. My phone buzzed. Travis from shipping. Orders are flowing, you beautiful genius. I leaned back in the chair, hands behind my head. There. Fixed. That'll be $50,000. You could have told us about the protocol. I could have. If I still worked here, if you'd asked, if you'd bothered to understand what you were firing. I stood up, meeting his eyes. But you knew better, right? Industry standard solutions and all that. Around us, the office slowly returned to normal. Phones stopped ringing frantically. The shipping alerts cleared. Millions of dollars in cargo started moving again. The thing is, Caleb, I continued, pulling up the system logs. This was the easy fix. Wait until you see what happens when the quarterly database maintenance comes due, or when the Texas heat knocks out the Dallas server room and someone needs to know the backup generator's override sequence, or when... What do you want? He looked defeated. I smiled. Right now? My check. After that? You'll have to wait and see. I logged out, stood, and headed for the door. Behind me, Caleb stared at the green dashboard like it might turn red again any second. It probably would. Before leaving, I made one more stop. The executive conference room, the same one where they'd fired me 3 hours ago. The door was closed, but I could hear raised voices inside. Board meeting, emergency session, no doubt. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. The room fell silent. 8 board members, the CEO Richard Hayworth, and various department heads all turned to stare. Caleb, standing at the presentation screen showing loss projections, went pale. Ms. Carter, Richard said carefully, we weren't expecting. I'll be brief. I pulled out my laptop, connected it to their system. Since I'm here, thought you should see something. The screen changed to an email thread. Caleb's emails, specifically, 2 months of messages between him and CyberCore, negotiating the contract before he'd even met me, before he'd evaluated my work, before he knew what I did. Interesting reading, I said. Particularly this one from April 3rd where CyberCore offers a finder's fee for bringing them a contract worth over $500,000 annually. Richard's face darkened. Caleb? That's taken out of context. I clicked to the next email. Or this one, where you describe the current system as probably outdated despite never having looked at it. Oh, and here's where you promise CyberCore they can start June 1st. That's 6 weeks before you even scheduled my performance review. How did you get these? Caleb, you sent them from your company email. Through servers I maintained, with the backup system I designed. I shrugged. I may have made copies for quality assurance purposes. The board members exchanged looks. One of them, Patricia, something, I'd fixed her laptop once, leaned forward. Ms. Carter, are you suggesting Mr. Stenson had ulterior motives? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm showing you evidence that your COO planned to outsource critical infrastructure for personal gain without due diligence, resulting in... I pulled up another screen. $3.2 million in losses during the 90 minutes your system was down. That's defamation, Caleb sputtered. I'll sue. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Caleb, page 1 of any law textbook. I turned back to the board. There's more. Expense reports that don't quite add up. Meetings with competitors that weren't reported. But honestly, that's your problem now. I unplugged my laptop, tucked it under my arm. The room was dead silent except for the air conditioning hum. Ms. Carter. Richard stood. Would you consider... No. You don't know what I was going to ask. You were going to ask me to come back, maybe with a raise, maybe with Caleb's job, maybe both. I headed for the door. The answer's still no. Why? Patricia asked. I paused at the threshold. Because you let him fire me without asking a single question. Because it took a crisis for you to realize value. Because I've spent 5 years being invisible until something broke. I looked each of them in the eye. I don't want to work for people who only see me when they're drowning. But the system will run fine. For about 6 weeks. Then you'll need maintenance. Real maintenance, not CyberCore's Band-Aid solutions. I pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. My consulting rates, they triple during emergencies. As I walked out, I heard Richard's voice, low and dangerous. Caleb, sit down. We need to discuss your future with this company. The elevator ride down felt like floating. In the lobby, employees stared, word traveled fast in corporate America. Some looked grateful, others curious, a few actually applauded. Travis from shipping gave me a thumbs up. I'd parked the Civic in Caleb's reserved spot, just for fun. His BMW would have to find somewhere else. As I drove away, I glimpsed him through the lobby windows, security flanking him, banker's box in hand. That MBA confidence thoroughly shattered. My phone had 17 missed calls by the time I got home. Recruiters, mostly. News of Northvale's morning meltdown had already hit LinkedIn. Amazing how fast vultures circle, but I wasn't ready to fly again. Not yet. I poured a glass of wine, good wine, not the stuff I usually bought, and sat on my balcony. It was noon on a Monday, and I was day drinking in my pajamas while Caleb was learning how unemployment felt. Sometimes revenge doesn't need violence or schemes. Sometimes it just needs patience and a really good password system. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Richard Hayworth. Please, name your price." I turned the phone off and took another sip of wine. They could wait. I had all the time in the world. The next morning, I woke to 37 texts, 43 missed calls, and enough LinkedIn notifications to crash a lesser phone. The wine had been good, the sleep better. For the first time in 5 years, I hadn't dreamed about server errors. Richard Hayworth had left 6 voicemails, each more desperate than the last. The final one was barely professional. "Maddie, please. The board has authorized me to make you any offer. Any offer. Call me back." I made coffee, good coffee from the expensive beans I'd been saving, and scrolled through the messages. Former colleagues, recruiters, competitors who'd somehow heard about yesterday's drama. The tech world was smaller than people thought. Then I saw the news alert. Northvale Logistics, COO terminated following system failure. The article was light on details but heavy on speculation. Stock price down 8%. Caleb Stenson, pursuing other opportunities. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. My doorbell rang at 9 a.m. sharp. Through the peephole, I saw Richard himself, looking like he'd slept in his suit. Behind him stood Patricia from the board and someone I didn't recognize, probably legal. I opened the door in my ratty college sweatshirt and bunny slippers. Power moves come in all forms. "Richard, bit early for house calls. May we come in?" I considered it, then stepped aside. They filed into my small living room, expensive suits looking absurd against my IKEA furniture. Richard's eyes went straight to my home office setup. 3 monitors, server rack humming in the corner. I'd built a better command center here than Northvale had given me. "Coffee?" I offered, already knowing they'd refuse. They were here to grovel, not socialize. "Maddie," Richard began. "I'll cut to the chase. We need you back. Not as an employee, as Chief Technology Officer. Full C-suite position, stock options, company car, 7-figure salary." I sipped my coffee. "No." Patricia leaned forward. "You haven't heard our full offer. Don't need to. Yesterday showed me everything I needed to know about Northvale's leadership." I set down my mug. "You let a con artist fire your most critical employee because it looked good on paper. You only called when things caught fire. That's not changing just because you're scared." The lawyer, definitely a lawyer, had that shark smell, spoke up. "Ms. Carter, considering the sensitive nature of your knowledge about Northvale systems, we'd need to discuss ongoing confidentiality agreements. Are you threatening me?" "No." Richard shot the lawyer a look that could peel paint. "No, absolutely not. James, wait in the car." The lawyer left, looking unhappy about it. Richard turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw past the CEO mask. He looked tired, old, scared. "You're right," he admitted. "We fucked up. I fucked up. I let Caleb convince me that newer meant better, that expensive meant unnecessary. I didn't ask questions because the numbers looked good. And now? Now I'm asking, what would it take?" I'd thought about this. Of course. Spent half the night considering possibilities. The money would be nice. The vindication even better. But it would take a time machine, I said finally. You can't unbetray someone, Richard. You can't undo the moment when I realized my 5 years meant less than 3 months of Caleb's bullshit. Patricia spoke quietly. Then what do you suggest? You need a CTO. I need freedom. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. Independent contractor agreement. I'll consult for exactly 6 months, train my replacement, someone I choose, and document everything properly. In exchange, $500,000, paid up front, non-negotiable. Richard didn't even blink. Done. I'm not finished. I work remotely. I set my own hours. I answer to you directly. No middle management. And I want a written apology from the board, acknowledging that my termination was a mistake. That could open us to liability. That's your problem. These are my terms. They exchanged glances. Patricia nodded slightly. Richard extended his hand. Welcome back, Ms. Carter. Temporarily. I shook it, noting his grip was firm but desperate. I'll start Monday. Have the check ready. As they filed out, Richard paused at the door. For what it's worth, Maddie, I'm sorry. We should have valued you when we had you. Yes, I agreed. You should have. I closed the door on Northvale's leadership, on their offers and apologies, on 5 years of being undervalued. Come Monday, I'd help them. But on my terms, at my price, on my schedule, sometimes the best revenge isn't leaving them in ruins. It's making them pay premium for what they threw away. 6 months passed faster than I expected. True to my word, I documented every system, every quirk, every midnight fix I'd implemented over the years. The manual I produced was 847 pages long. Richard called it the Bible, and had it printed in hardcover for the server room. My replacement was Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant systems architect I'd poached from Microsoft. She had the skills and, more importantly, the backbone to tell executives when they were being idiots. I spent 3 months training her, 3 months watching her confidence grow as she mastered the beast I'd built. They're going to try to lowball you. I warned her over lunch on my last week. Don't let them. You're worth twice what they're offering. She grinned. Already negotiated. They're so terrified of another meltdown. I got everything I asked for, plus a clause that says they can't fire me without board approval. Smart woman. On my final day, a Friday in December, I came to the office one last time. The same building where I'd been escorted out like a criminal was now rolling out the red carpet. Richard had asked me to attend the quarterly board meeting to formally hand over responsibilities. I wore jeans and my DEF CON shirt again. Some things never change. The meeting was surprisingly emotional. Patricia actually teared up during her speech about learning from mistakes and valuing human capital. Richard presented me with a plaque, which I graciously accepted and immediately knew would become a doorstop. Any final words, Maddie? Richard asked. I stood, looking around the room at faces that had dismissed me, then begged for me, then paid through the nose for me. Yeah. The system you have now is solid. Elena knows it inside and out. Trust her. Listen to her. Don't let another Caleb convince you that cheaper is better or that people are replaceable. I paused. Oh. And the server room air conditioning unit needs replacing by July. It's been limping along for 2 years. Don't ignore it just because it's still working. They laughed nervously, probably adding AC replacement to their budgets already. As I packed up my consultant laptop for the last time, Elena walked me to the elevator. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. For the job, the training, but mostly for showing them what we're worth. They'll forget, I warned. In 2 years, 3 maybe, some new hotshot will come in with big ideas about cost-cutting. They always do. Maybe, but this time they'll have to go through the board. And Patricia has your manual memorized. We shook hands, and I left Northvale for the last time. No security escort, no cardboard box. Just me. Walking out with a consultant's check that would let me take a year off, maybe 2 if I was careful. In the parking lot, I found Travis from shipping waiting by my car with a small crowd of warehouse workers. Heard you were leaving for real this time, he said. Wanted to say thanks. You saved our asses more times than anyone knows. One of them handed me a card, handmade, with signatures from what looked like half the shipping department. Inside, someone had written, "The only IT person who actually fixed things instead of just rebooting." I may have teared up a little. As I drove away, my phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message from Caleb Stenson. I almost deleted it unread. But curiosity won. Maddie, I know you probably hate me. And you have every right. I was an arrogant ass who thought an MBA made me smarter than everyone else. I've had 6 months to think about it, and you were right. I apologize. I'm now working at a startup, and I promise I'll never underestimate the tech team again. Thank you for the lesson, even if it cost me everything. Caleb. I didn't respond. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. 2 years later, I run my own consulting firm specializing in disaster recovery and system architecture. My clients include 3 Fortune 500 companies and, ironically, CyberCore. They hired me to teach them how to actually understand legacy systems. Richard still texts occasionally, usually when something goes wrong. I refer him to Elena, who's doing brilliantly. She got promoted to senior CTO last month and implemented a new policy. Anyone who suggests firing IT staff has to spend a week shadowing them first. As for me, I work when I want, with clients who value expertise from day one, not just when everything's on fire. My home office has better equipment than most corporate buildings, and I haven't set an alarm clock in 18 months. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes, the best revenge is simply knowing your worth and making them pay for it, literally. Every morning, I check my bank account, see that consultant's fee still earning interest, and smile. They thought they could replace me in 15 minutes. Instead, they paid $500,000 to get me back for 6 months. I'd call that a win. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of workplace revenge, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or similar experiences. Have you ever been undervalued at work? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments.